Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Strawberry Hill Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Simmons, and as always, we're here at the Shop Cigar Lounge. You got to come visit us if you haven't. We got live music every Friday and Saturday from 8 to 10, so on, yada, yada. This place is great. You got to come see us, but let's get back to the podcast. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Strawberry Hill Podcast. And today, I have one of my favorite people. I say that all the time, but I've actually worked with you a lot and on the retreats that we work with.
Yes.
Miss Rachel Murdock. Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Should I be worried that you tell everyone they're your favorite people? Because that's kind of what it sounds like.
Maybe. So, I don't know. Maybe. So, you just started a new clinician therapy. I don't even know how to say it. What do you call it?
Some days I don't know what I'm doing.
Service.
Yes. So I own and operate a group mental health practice. So I opened in January of 2023 after working crimes against children for 17 years. And I spent 10 and a half of those at the FBI and then 6.5 at a local children's advocacy center in Springfield, and decided I wanted to get back on the clinical side and wanted to focus on first responder mental health. And it was just me. And then a few months later, I thought, I think I need some help. There's a lot of need out in Eastern Jackson County. So I brought my first clinician on, and then now we're at 13 of us. So we've just kept growing.
When did you guys open?
January of 23. So I left the FBI on a Friday and opened on a Monday.
January 23.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were working for someone else. I didn't know if you were.
that was it. I was working for me, myself,
shit.
and I.
Sorry, we can curse on here.
Okay, good to know.
So it's Beyond the Storm, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Naming a business is hard because it's like a baby, right? Like you don't want something that's going to be hard to remember, hard to follow. And so that was when I was thinking about, like, what do I want my business to represent? And I know a lot of people feel really hopeless. And so it's like, after the storm passes, we're here and we're going to get you through. So that's how we picked the name.
That's awesome.
And we've grown and just kept growing.
Yeah, I didn't know that you just ran out the gate and you're like, I'm going to open up my own clinical service.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. But I was like, I've worked for someone else for so long, and I came out of the federal government, and there's a lot of politics and other things that, come with that. And so I was scared to death because I went from a salary to no salary, like being self-employed. So I was like, okay, I just hope this works. And, our friend Angie Jones always laughs when I share that, but because I was like, what if I'm not busy? What if nobody comes to me? And she was like, I assure you that
be busy.
There are some things. And now every time I say, like, I'm so busy, or I'm, getting my ass kicked, she's like, hey, remember when you were worried about not being busy? I told you so.
Well, I think one of the scariest things to do in life is like to bet on yourself and just like, all right, I'm going to go on a limb and just do what I kind of want to do. And I don't know if I'm going to have an income, or I don't know how things work, but I'm betting on myself. That's like, I feel your pain. I've done it here, and I was just like, I don't know if this is going to work, so let's try it out. Let's hope for the best.
Yeah.
But
and when you're a hustler, right, like, you're not just going to sit on your couch at home and not try to make it work, but it's hard to be a business owner, and a lot of unknowns, and the economy impacts what people are willing to spend their money on. So you experience that here. We experience that in mental health too. People are like, I need help, but I can't afford it. Or they prioritize other things over it because they have to. So it's kind of a, you have to ride the wave for sure.
Yeah. So where are you from here? From Kansas City? Are you?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I grew up all over. My dad worked for Union Pacific Railroad, and so we were kind of all over just with his job. He died in 1991, and we moved back up here because my mom was from here. Yeah, I was 9.
When you were young.
Yeah. Well, he was too. I mean, he was 33. I was 9, and so my mom wanted to move back to Kansas City. She had family in Grain Valley and wanted some support because she had 3 kids under the age of 10 when he passed, and so that's what brought us back up here. So I consider Kansas City my home because I've lived here since the 90s, but kind of all over Texas and Arkansas and St. Louis area as well. So
how was life like after all that happened, moving around a lot?
Yeah, I mean, the moving around really stopped after he passed away. And I was young and just, going with the flow at the time. I mean, it was, of course, really challenging to have to move up here and leave our life behind and just everything that we knew. But I mean, the harder part, of course, was that he died in a car accident. And so it was very unexpected and didn't have time to prepare. And so all of a sudden my mom has, 2 kids that are they turned 2 days after he died, my sisters. They're twins, and then me, and then we just had to kind of start life over again.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Mom's still here?
She is, yeah.
She sounds like a trooper, man.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I became a mom, I realized how much she did to make us be able to overcome that. Because I think when you live it, you don't realize it. But then when I became a mom, I was like, she had 3 children under the age of 9 and suddenly had lost her husband and just found a way to make it work.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you grew up. So from there, you grew up here, and then like, what got you into like, what did you do after like high school? Did you go straight into like, let me try to be and work for the FBI, or did you do something else? Or?
No. So I went to college down at the time at Southwest Missouri State, SMS, but it's Missouri State now. And I started, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And then said, I'm actually interested in psychology, but I want to work with offenders. So I thought I was going to work in a jail or prison setting and treat offenders. And one of my mentors, like my junior year of college, said, I study forensic interviews and I think you would be interested in them. It's on the victim side, but I think it would be something that you would have an interest in. So I started studying the research with him. Then went on to graduate school in clinical psychology, but still had that focus in forensics.
So you've had quite the background of being a therapist already.
Yes, I did. So that's what I actually did right out of graduate school is I worked for a children's advocacy center as a forensic interviewer. And I've always taught at the collegiate level as well. So I would teach, part-time and do the child advocacy. So then I left that to try to do therapy for a couple of years. And I focused primarily on trauma survivors. And when I was in this forensic interview role, though, being a forensic interviewer for the FBI was kind of like the cream of the crop, but they only had 2 positions at the entire FBI for that job when I started in the field.
Like in the whole country?
In the whole country, yes. So I thought there's no way I'll ever get a position. And then in 2012, they posted a position in Kansas City. I was in Springfield at the time, and I was a therapist. And I thought, I'll give this a try. Like, I don't even know if they'll give me a second look, but like, how cool would it be to say that I even got interviewed by the FBI? So it was their 5th created position. So they had 4 prior. And they said, you can, the position is in Kansas City or LA. Do you have a preference? And I said, well, I will only take Kansas City because I have family there and I don't want to be so far away. And I remember being so worried that I was like not flexible enough that they were going to say like, well, we really need somebody who can just go wherever. But
they probably needed someone in Kansas City.
They did.
Like, yeah, we got an open spot in LA, but we need somebody in Kansas City.
They did. And so, I interviewed for that job in May of 2012 and I got the job offer on a Wednesday in October of 2012. And they said, we need you in Quantico next Monday. And I thought, what am I supposed to do?
Next Monday?
Yeah, like 4 days later. So I had a caseload of 25. I was in the middle of teaching college, but I was worried that I said, is there any way I can delay and start? And they said, no, like the funding will run out. So you have to figure this out. So I went to Quantico for a week because I was a civilian, not an agent, but I went for a week and then I worked at the FBI, closed out my practice and taught for 3 months while I waited for the semester to end. So I commuted back and forth from Kansas City to Springfield 3 times a week and worked out of the Springfield office the other days. But I worked probably about 18 hours a day trying to make it work.
Jesus.
Yeah, we just made it happen.
And so then you went just full time with FBI.
I did, yes. And
what year was that?
That was it was essentially 2012, but January of 2013 was when I was able to move up here and work exclusively for them. And that's what I did through January of 2023. And so I was a full-time forensic interviewer with them, became a supervisor towards the end of my tenure with them. But at the time I was traveling all over the U.S. and internationally doing interviews and trainings for kiddos that were involved in federal crimes.
So they would just send you like, hey, wherever we need you, this is where you got to go.
Yeah. We had areas of responsibility. So I was mostly in the Midwest. I spent a lot of time in Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Wisconsin, Arkansas. I mean, kind of all over this area. But for the FBI, I've traveled to Kazakhstan, Estonia, Philippines, Thailand, kind of all over that area.
Why would they send you all the way out there?
It was not fun, especially Kazakhstan, not a bucket list item, but there was a child sex tourism case out there. So an American citizen was teaching students and victimizing them. And so that's how we had jurisdiction. And so we had to go and interview the children that were victimized by our American citizen.
Gosh.
So
you literally can go all across the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the last places I went because the shutdown happened. Yeah, that was my last international trip.
So did they like give you warning, like, or there was just like a 2-day notice, like, hey, you're going to Kazakhstan?
No,
on Thursday?
I definitely had warning, and they did a good job preparing us both like on a medical perspective and a safety perspective, because a lot of the places that you go, you have to be careful about what food you ingest or the water and exactly. Yeah. And so lots of guidance on, you know, what not to take overseas and, you know, with devices and jewelry and things like that. And also, you know, I just was never by myself. Like I would always meet up with our law enforcement or just make smart choices. And it was definitely interesting, you know, some of the different places that we would go, because you do stick out a bit. Like you don't, you know, sure you don't live
stick
here.
Stick out like a sore thumb in Kazakhstan.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So, you know, and we were there for about 5 days, and it was an interesting experience, but thankfully, you know, with the right precautions, you know, nothing happened that was problematic, but it's just being that far away from home and in such an environment that is so foreign was a lot to manage, and the jet lag and all of that.
That sounds great. How long of a flight was it? You remember? You
know, it wasn't actually too bad. Thailand was much worse, because Thailand, you have to fly from U.S. to Tokyo, which is 13 hours, and then another 7 hours to Thailand. And so all in, I was 39 hours with layovers and everything. So Kazakhstan, we laid over in Germany. And so, I mean, I think I flew from Chicago to Germany and then Germany over. So it wasn't terrible. It's just kind of located in an interesting area. It almost feels a bit like Russia and a bit not. And so it's just kind of just an interesting environment. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't know you traveled across the world like that.
Yeah, I did.
So how many different countries have you went to? Do you know?
I spent a lot of time in Asia. We would rotate our trips, and so I just had the luck of the draw.
I guess I just never knew that like that many federal crimes are happening in different countries.
Yeah. So the FBI has what they call legats, legal attaches, where they have FBI offices all over the world that will manage crimes that occur on their property. And so American...
So is it just like any American that commits a crime, like is it a federal crime then if it's another country?
It could be. So it depends on, you know, kind of what they're looking at. In my case, it was almost always going to be human trafficking or child sex tourism.
I'm sure that happens a lot in different countries.
It does. Yeah. And, you know, I remember my first overseas experience was in Honduras. And because they are such a, you know, lower socioeconomic status country, when you have an American citizen coming in and bringing $100 to engage in a sex act, that'll feed their family for weeks. And so that's why they can often be these very vulnerable, perfect victims, because they rely so heavily on, you know, getting out of this impoverished, you know, situation that I remember interviewing the girl, and she's like, I wanted to do this. Like, I don't want you to think that I was forced. And I believe she wasn't. She can't legally consent, and it's still a crime. But for her, this was a win. And so I remember just shifting my mindset on kind of victimization, especially in some of our poorer countries or poorer areas, that there are some benefits that come, you know, from that. So, so I've been to Honduras, Manila, Philippines, Tokyo, Bangkok, Thailand, Kazakhstan, and I can't remember the capital of that because Kazakhstan's enough, and then Estonia, and I think that's it for work.
And I'm sure it's not like you're not going over there to like have fun. Like you're doing your job, but then I'm sure you're not thinking a lot about, let me go out and see the nightlife and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's been, you know, it depends on where you're at. I spent 17 days in Bangkok because I was there for training. And so we did on the weekends go out to the market and try to immerse ourselves in the culture a little bit, which was pretty fun. It depended on, you know, did we have transportation? Was it safe? The embassy would coordinate things for us sometimes. But a lot of it, I was just wanting to get home to my family. And so knowing that it was going to take so long to get back, that we would kind of go in and out and not, you know, we're not really spending a lot of time doing fun things. And it was harder to track down victims overseas because they don't have, many of the kids weren't in school, or they weren't able to say like, oh, this kid's in 3rd grade at this school, so you can go. So it could take us a couple days to even recover who we were going to, or identify where the kid was that we were hoping we could locate after we travel all that way. So it was just a very different experience than what we did here.
That's crazy. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. I mean, it was a smaller portion of my job compared to the, in U.S. stuff, but I think it is something that a lot of people don't realize because the program was pretty small. Like there were 5 of us, so we divided the country and then rotated international trips. Now I think they have 22 or 23 interviewers, but you think,
wow, that's a big step from 2.
It is big. Yeah. They've grown exponentially, but you also think like that's covering 56 field offices plus international cases. It's still not enough. So we're, but it's much better than it was. I mean, I remember one week flying to Chico, California, and then having to go to Portland, Maine in the same week, which is very opposite just because you were trying to fit it all in and get everywhere and prioritize the cases because everybody wants answers and justice. And so I remember that being tough to balance it all because there's such demand.
Yeah, so what you're doing over there is to pretty much you're interviewing, you're kind of get your evidence and all that stuff, and then you're going back to work on the case.
I wasn't, because my role was to do the interview.
Gotcha.
And so the only way that I would follow up would be if another interview was needed or if I had to testify in court. Thankfully, there was a really high plea rate with our cases. So we didn't go to court a ton.
So if you had to go like back to court in like Kazakhstan?
Court would have happened here.
Okay.
So thankfully, yes, like the assigned agent would also travel over with us. So let's say like the agent for Kazakhstan, I believe, was actually from Denver. And so the case would have been held in Denver. So I would not have had to go back there, thankfully.
I don't think because a lot of people always hear like, I want to be a forensic interviewer. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people know the ins and outs of like what you really do.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of work, a lot of travel.
It was for the FBI. I mean, if you do it here at one of the children's advocacy centers, the individuals come to you, so there's not as much travel, but it really is a underappreciated job, in my opinion, because we are the ones sitting with children who are going to tell you about their victimization, oftentimes for the very first time. And so I always was reminded, like, what an honor it is that someone maybe has never told anyone that this happened to them, and they trust me and are willing to tell me.
They're telling you the worst thing that's probably ever happened to them.
Yeah. And being able to have to ask those hard investigative questions, but trying to corroborate, how can we get justice for this child, but then also protect others from these individuals. And even starting in 2012 to when I left, the exponential increase in technology use really changed the type of interviews we were doing, because we would have multi-victim cases where there could be 11,000 victims that we've identified in a case and 4 or 5 offenders. Or we had people victimizing kids, from all different countries, and whether or not we get cooperation from those countries to be able to prosecute. There was just so many ins and outs that I didn't anticipate going into it, but it's what led me here. So I will be forever thankful, for the opportunity. And it made me really start to recognize in myself, like, I wasn't doing a great job caring for myself.
That was going to be my next question is just like, what did your life look like outside of that? Because it's like, didn't seem like there was a lot of time just for you to take care of yourself. Yeah.
And some of that was self-imposed, to be honest, because, when you're a helper, it's sometimes hard to feel like you can prioritize yourself. But some of it was also the workload. Like when you are overextended and understaffed, and many, organizations experience that. How do you not feel selfish, like taking time off or saying no, like, because there's going to be an impact on someone. And so I did get very burned out, and ultimately that is part of what led to me separating from the agency. Was like, I don't think I can sustain this. I don't like how I feel. I don't like who I've become. But I also really recognized that it was harder to feel like I could take care of myself than it should have been. And it took me longer to identify like how bad of shape I was in until it was too late. So when I got out, I said, I want to prioritize those who are resistant to getting help and let them know that like there is hope on the other side, and that it's okay to struggle with the things that you're exposed to. Because that was the thing. I was like, I'm a therapist. How do I not have this figured out? Or who's going to come see me if they think that I don't have my stuff together? So it's like this, kind of mind job of trying to figure it out. But I didn't do a great job. I had very little work-life balance, and I had to learn the hard way by kind of crashing and burning before I said, okay, we got to get out. And I'm still not even all the way there because it takes a long time to kind of come out. A long time.
Like I've been working on it for like almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
And it's like you're never going to 100% get it,
right.
But like you get better, every time you work on it every year.
Exactly.
Like I'm a lot better than what I was like 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Because you start to see like your body going through stuff and like your mind, you're like, okay, I know what this feeling is.
Yes.
Like now this is the way to hopefully correct it. So
yes,
I feel you on that. Like it takes
it's a journey.
So like you pretty much experienced the same thing, like law enforcement burnout. I mean, so you like a lot of people understand like when you're in those positions, like you're not just like going to work and like, hey, I'm just going to interview and they're just going to tell me about their day and it's going to be great. Like, right. It's like, you're just like in the shit.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
And that,
and the agency, dynamics can have a toll too. Like I do think there were some things that happened, where there was some betrayal that was experienced. Yeah. And that, I say it's kind of interesting that you would think the hardest part of my job was absolutely like crimes against children, but there were other dynamics with management and other things that made it challenging in different ways. And so that's what I love being able to hold space for in my current role when people come to me to say, like, it's not the job, it's my chain of command. It's the lack of mental health support at my department. Because years ago, and you know this, like, we did not talk about mental health.
Yeah, it was like a stigma.
It was.
Yeah, don't you talk about that. You get out there and you do your job.
Suck
you
it
go
up,
home,
right?
And you drink your sorrows away. And
right.
You be depressed. And That's what you're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. But now, since that narrative is shifted, when departments don't prioritize it, the employees feel like why is my department not doing this and these other departments are? And so it's just interesting to watch that we're open to it, but people also expect it now. And so when that doesn't happen, it has an impact. So, yeah, I mean, even though I was a civilian, that's where a lot of my passion lies too, because I was definitely not sitting in an office waiting for things to be brought my way. I was, traveling to site. My first mass violence incident was the Boston bombing. So I had worked at the FBI for 4 months when that happened.
And then you went out there.
And I went out there.
Holy
And so
smokes.
It was...
talking about like the marathon?
Oh. Yeah. So I'd been with the Bureau because that was April of 2013 and I started in November. And so I was the second interviewer out there. We had an interviewer that was... nearer to Boston. And so she went out kind of more immediately so. And then I came out later and we interviewed some of the children that were at the finish line, either as witnesses or as victims who had been impacted, hit by shrapnel, things of that nature. But talk about sink or swim. It's like, here you go.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is some mass casualty terroristic thing that happened. Hey, you're going.
Yeah. It definitely was not what I pictured when I got into the job. And it was so eerie being there when so much media is still there and just all the things you don't think about, like, that victims have to go by different names because they're being so harassed sometimes by the media. And so trying to find and gain access to do our job was hard because we couldn't just say, hey, we need, Joe Smith. It would be like, what's their moniker? How are we going to locate them? Which hospital are they at? It was just a lot of coordination, not to mention that it's on TV 24/7 and all that anyone's talking about. So even at the end of the day, you feel like you can't get away from it or turn it off. And so that was my, first big kind of like, okay, this isn't, always going to be child abuse, like hands-on offenses or taking pictures or things like that. It's these other things. And so, then you fast forward to, some of the last things, and I did not go to Uvalde, thankfully, but my team did. And then the last one that I worked was Highland Park parade shooting. So another one of those. And so the way we responded definitely changed over the years because we learned, but that was always the interesting part of my job is like you just watch TV differently when that
you're like, oh, I'm going to be going
here
to that.
we go, or my team is, or something like that. So that was one of those other things too that I'm always mindful of. We can't assume that civilians aren't going to have their own level of exposure because I've definitely seen some things. And so that's why I'm always really passionate about my dispatchers and other people in first responder agencies, because I know that they have different types of exposure that they need, checked in on for as well.
So I know, so you have a daughter. Oh, you're good. You have a daughter and
Yes.
she's 4?
Uh-huh.
Now, how has your previous job impacted, being a parent now?
Yeah. So I will tell you that I think that because I have a little more separation from it, it's gotten a little better because it was you can't unknow things, right? And so we are still very open in our household. Like, she has known the right name for her body parts since, beginning.
My wife is the
love
same
it.
way with our
it.
kids. So, yeah.
Yeah, because, and the reason we do that is we don't want kids to feel like they're going to be in trouble for using the language. And we would see kids that would come in and say, I can't tell you what happened because I'm going to get in trouble. What do we do with that? So, from an early age, we have communicated in that way. And right now, she doesn't do anything on phones or devices without our, knowledge, but it's definitely something that, will be very openly discussed in our house about online safety, and there will be rules and parameters. And I will take the things that I saw, like kids having phones in their bedrooms after bedtime was oftentimes when these crimes would occur. And so just trying to decide as a family, like, how do we balance not over protecting her, but also recognizing that she could be doing something very innocent and be lured into something. And that's often what we saw. Like, these kids were not actively reaching out to try to do something they shouldn't have been. Oftentimes they were on Facebook or Instagram. I had a kid that was victimized on Pinterest, and I thought, how does this even happen? But where kids are, offenders will follow. So education and keeping up with what kids are doing and where they're spending time will always be important to me for my daughter and for my nieces and nephews. But I am glad I've softened a little bit, because I think I would have been a little overboard if I hadn't not, gotten away and not feel like I'm inundated with it all of the time.
And I think you made a good point, because it's like I felt that way too when before I left the sheriff's office. It was just like I was a bad dad. I didn't realize I was a bad dad, but because I was, I was the detective. I've seen the worst shit, and just like going, you look at your kids different. You look at the people that surround your kids different, and so it's like it's hard to like. I know this sounds weird, but it's hard to act normal.
Oh, it is.
When you go through all that, and then like you said, separation helps.
It does.
Because I'm a lot better now, because I'm like, okay, I'm not there anymore, and I'm not seeing that stuff every day, and I'm not going through that every day. So my mind's not always thinking about that. It's still in the back of my head,
of course.
But, that's never going to go away. But that whole protective state where you're just like no one, you're not going to sit on Santa's lap. You're like,
I know, seriously.
chill out. I shouldn't be like that. Yeah.
No, we're the same way. We're like, you want to have a slumber party? Yeah, that will always be at our house, because we can trust ourselves, not anyone else. And it's those little things that you don't realize how much that you're just trying to protect your kid, but it's just, it can be a little too much or too overboard, and we do have to let kids figure things out. And many kids that are overly restricted will find ways to do it outside of your house, right? Like they'll go to their friend's house and use their friend's phone, who maybe doesn't have as much monitoring. So we will teach her the safe things to do, and more importantly, open dialogue, where she knows that no matter what she has done, she can come to us and we will fix it, because so many kids would fear what the parent reaction would do.
Because they're like, oh, I'm going to be in trouble.
Right. And there was a rampant number of suicides that kids were completing towards the end of my time with the FBI, because they would be involved in these sextortion, blackmail schemes, where it's like, if you don't send me more pictures, I will exploit you or share them online, or you can send me a bunch of money. And so some of them were spending money, or others of them were truly completing suicide, because the thought of that ridicule or being in trouble was too much. And so that's the thing that we want to be really mindful of. Even if you made a mistake, something we told you not to do 82 times, you can come to us and we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. We'll fix it.
Yeah.
You might be in trouble later, but we're not going to be in trouble now. Let's figure this out.
Right.
So what was the aha moment for you when you're just you're at your job before?
Yeah.
And what was it that it was like, I need to leave. I need to get out.
Oh, man. So I'm
sure you had multiple.
Well, no, but I had one. I did. So I had returned from maternity leave. So my daughter was probably about 5 months old. And I'd been down in Oklahoma for the week and had done, I think, 17 forensic interviews. So, it had been a very busy week, lots of driving, lots of travel. And I get to Harrisonville, which is 20 minutes from where I lived at the time.
Yeah.
And I literally could not drive anymore. Like I don't know what came over me, but like my foot could not hit the pedal. Like I couldn't do it. So I pull over and I call my husband and I said, I can't get home. Like I'm exhausted. I don't know what to do. And he's home with our baby. And he's like, what do you want me to do? Like, is there someone we can call? And so I end up getting myself together, get myself home. But when I try to get out of bed the next day, I just can't. Mm-hmm. And so I hit the wall. I called my direct supervisor and I said, please don't tell anyone, but I think I'm going to quit. I just need to decide this weekend. And she was so gracious and thankfully didn't panic and just said, take the time you need. And I'll check in with you Monday.
Sure.
But I just, honestly, I hit the wall. And I can't say that like anything bad had happened that week. It was just, it was cumulative. Mm-hmm. And so I was a new mom. I was exhausted. I wasn't resting. I was having mom guilt. And I was doing too much.
Yeah, it's always the smallest thing that tips you over.
It was. Yeah. And for me, it was like, I cannot push the pedal anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I just had that moment where I was like, I can't keep doing this. And people tried. They tried to make some things different. They tried to provide some relief, but that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. So I promoted a little while later thinking maybe changing roles would help, but it didn't. And so I kind of started entertaining the thought of like, what would life outside of the FBI look like, and started putting the wheels in motion and doing some things on the background so I would be ready to go. And then one day I just said, I'm going to always wonder if this is the right thing, but if I don't do it and rip the Band-Aid off, then I am going to sit in limbo forever. Mm-hmm. And so I talked with a lot of friends and basically was like, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I can get another job.
Of course.
But I can't replace me. Mm-hmm. And so I just ripped the Band-Aid off about a year and a half later. So, but that was for me the first moment when I was like, this job is changing who I am. I was having lots of health issues. I was having all these things that were not explainable. So I would go to doctors and all my labs looked good and everything looked fine. And
right there with you. I know all that.
Yeah.
trouble.
You exhaust it. And it's frustrating. Like you don't want to find out you have something terrible, but you're also like, why do I feel like this? And so I had an MRI and there were some lesions that were found on my brain. And so, of course, my brain went to like, I have brain cancer. Like this is not going to end well. And long story short, where they were and what the neurologist told me was, this is chronic stress and you are damaging your brain.
Jesus.
And you need to make some changes. And so that was...
Even the doctor was like, get out.
Basically. Yeah. And so I said to my husband, I said, what is it going to take for me to take this seriously? Like, am I going to have a heart attack? Am I going to have to almost die to think that like I can prioritize this? And so that's when I said, you know, I think we're too far gone. I don't know that anything else can help, but let me try one final thing. And I promoted and I still felt the way I did. And so I said, you know, I want to be home more because I was traveling all the time. I want to do something different. And so I took the leap.
Yeah, I know when I left, and like there's nothing wrong with my like the sheriff's office. It's a great place.
Yeah.
But it just like it was taking a toll on me.
Right.
But I know like the day I decided I'm not coming back, it literally felt like I lost 50 pounds.
I know.
It was just like, I don't have to do this anymore. Like I can actually do this.
Yeah.
And it just like the relief I felt, it literally changed my life.
I get that.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. And that's the thing, like the FBI's work against crimes against children, I have nothing negative to say about that. It is such an important mission. Some of the greatest people I know work there. And it didn't fit for me anymore. Yeah. And I feel like there's just not enough permission to say that for people to say like, this is how I thought my life was going to be. I never thought I'd leave the FBI. People fight to get into the FBI. So some people probably thought I was crazy for leaving, but I also, what served me 10 years prior, it's okay for things to have changed. And a lot had changed in my life. I'd been divorced and remarried. I had a child and it wasn't meeting my needs. And it was impacting me so negatively that I just couldn't continue. And what was funny is I leave and I, like you, felt so much better, but then it's almost like my body revolted a little bit. And I had a few more kind of weird health issues come up that I know now were stress induced, but my body, I think, was just trying to kind of get back to that normalcy. But that's how
you live in that stress level for so
forever.
long. That's what you're used to.
Right. And that's it. I mean, so it doesn't have to be because your agency's terrible or the work you're doing is terrible, but sometimes it's just what you need to do for you.
Yeah. So do you miss it?
I do. I mean, there are still times when I say like, man, should I have left? Or,
I think you made the right choice.
I do too. I mean, and at the end of the day, I always get back there, and I really appreciate that, like, the people close to me leave space for that, where I can have doubt or imposter syndrome to say, oh, did I do the right thing? Is this going to be workable? But, I miss the people greatly, and I do miss the work, but I don't miss the travel.
Don't miss the stress.
And I don't miss the, like, being... I laugh because I'm like, there's still more work than there is time, but like that was the theme, because crimes against children is just rampant. And so I do like being my own boss, and I get to decide what I want to do, and not, if I don't want to do it, I don't have to. And so that's really freeing and helpful at this point in my life. So, but yeah, there's definitely days, especially since I'm still pretty newly out, where I'm like, I wonder what it would be like if I were still there right now. Although right now, kind of in the political climate, there's some uncertainty in the federal government in general. So I will say I am thankful to not be worried about my job and longevity.
You're not going to fire yourself, so you're good.
Exactly.
So you get out, thankfully, and you start Beyond the Storm. Yeah. So how's everything going?
So good. I came on right when Missouri, the state of Missouri, passed their statutory mandate for first responders to have to meet with a mental health clinician every 3 to 5 years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, all first responder agencies on the Missouri side.
That's good.
Yeah, it's
I know
really
that
good.
Sounds like a pain in the butt, y'all, but you need to go see a therapist.
Honestly, it's been great. I was very worried because it's mandatory, and people love mandatory about as much as a wet blanket. So, but it's been awesome. So, I had a police department for my first agency, and then it's just kind of, fallen into place. But I have 10 agencies that I do these wellness visits for now: police, fire, EMS. And that's my primary duty, is kind of working alongside those departments. And what's been cool is I haven't kept hard data, but I've just kind of anecdotally collected things over the last couple of years. But I would say really between about 15 to 20% who come in for the wellness visits are actually returning for future counseling, because they identify something they want to work on, which is the hope. Yeah. Like, if you've got something going on, you will acknowledge it and say, like, it's okay for me to get some assistance. And because many of the agencies are doing these once every 1 to 3 years, we get that baseline at the beginning, and then each year we kind of keep our finger on the pulse, and it's to be more proactive about mental health. So I can't say everybody loves it, but I think it's just the norm now. And I've built relationships with these departments where I'm not, the enemy, and I'm not somebody, they recognize that I do have their best interest, and that what they tell me is confidential. I think that was one of the bigger concerns is, is this going to be weaponized? Are you going to tell our people? Yeah. And I explained to them, like, my license is on the line, and what you tell me stays here. And now they know it, because I've proven that. And so I think the environment is safer. So yeah, it's great. And I've hired a bunch of, new staff that want to work with first responders, and then others that work with children and couples and families.
Yeah, so you're all like, you can do it all. Yep. That's good.
Yep. That way, if somebody says, hey, I'm okay, but my wife is struggling, or my children are having a hard time, we have somebody there that could help with all of that.
So you can
we're one-stop shop.
But exactly. So, and I was going to go back to the mandatory thing. And I remember, like, when I was in recruiting and training and stuff like that, and like talking to the deputies that would come on, and I was like, one things I would always tell them, like, you need to go see someone at least once a year. Yeah. I was like, I know that some people don't want to do it, but it's like, you get to talk to somebody that is not family, friend, or coworker, right? That doesn't have any skin in the game. They're not going to go tell anybody your problems or what's going on. Right. And like, you just release everything that you want on them, and then they try to figure out like the best solution to make your life better. I was like, who wouldn't want that? Right. Yeah, but the last appointment that I had before coming here, that's exactly what I shared with them. I said, I'm neutral, and so I am not impacted emotionally by this, and so I can have a more objective approach to be able to help you problem solve. Yeah. And I'm with you. I'm like, I'm a therapist, and I have a therapist, and I always will, because even though I have all of these skills and all this knowledge, I can't do it to myself, and I need that accountability of somebody saying, I'm wondering, have you considered this, or maybe, why haven't you done the things that we talked about even? So I'm with you. I hate that it
had to be mandated, but when it was optional, people didn't follow through.
Yeah.
And so
I think
now
it should be
they force the
mandatory
issue
for everybody.
I bet it'll eventually become nationwide. There's 7 or 8 states right now that do it nationwide, and they're just tightening the timelines up. So it used to maybe be once every 1 to 3 years, and now we're seeing recommendations some places for every 6 months because a lot can change.
It needs at least once a year.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels good for the agencies that I'm able to do once every year or 2 years so far. It gives us a jumping off point, and then if they come in and things have changed drastically, we can really hammer that out and be able to give them some actionable things that they can try, things to look out for. I mean, that's part of it too, where we're telling people, if you're doing well, that's great, but here's some things to look out in yourself and in your colleagues, because maybe it's your coworker that needs the help, and you can approach them about that.
So why do you think that there was a shift in like seeking help in mental health in agencies? Because like I know with like our agency, nothing bad against them, but like our shift was when our 2 deputies died.
Yeah.
Like, and they were like, we need to put a heavy focus on mental health. And I know that's not with like every agency, because not every agency has that kind of death.
Sure.
But like, why do you think there's such like the nature of mental health has definitely changed in law enforcement and in, the country. But why do you think there was like, I mean, what, just your opinion, like what shift do you think, like what?
So, I mean, I agree with you. I think sometimes it takes a really bad critical incident for people to say we need to handle this differently. But what I am hearing from a lot of my more seasoned commanders or people that have been around a long time, they are starting to recognize that the past is catching up with them, and they want it to be better for the people coming after them. So that's what I'm hearing is, maybe I didn't do it right, and I know the impact that it had on me, or I'm getting really close to retirement and I'm kind of afraid of what skeletons are going to come out of the closet whenever I'm not distracted and busy and doing more casework. So I think generally speaking, we're seeing, exponential increases in suicide rates. And so it's like we can't ignore the elephant in the room. There's something going on there where we need to be able to acknowledge that we're talking about this and we know it's an issue, but if we're not walking the walk, then it's just lip service. And so I think there's been more of a responsibility for many departments to say, this is an investment. I mean, you have to find a clinician to partner with you and you have to pay for their time. But it does, the hope is that we reduce medical retirements, that we reduce suicide rates, and we increase access to mental health care.
Yeah.
And I think because we have more culturally competent clinicians that are working with first responders, the stigma of people don't get it, like that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
So years ago when we didn't have people that specialized in this, I think people's fear was valid because they would say, my clinician might cried or something like that,
well, that
right?
was very true because, like, especially like clinicians that, like you said, like that specialize in seeing first responders.
Right.
It's like a lot of, like, I remember seeing a therapist when I first started seeing a therapist and they had no business seeing a first responder.
Right.
And I'm trying to tell them everything. And then they're just like, what happened?
Right.
Like, well, like, let's just talk it through. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like,
Right.
yeah, like,
Right.
let's, yeah.
And that's it. And so I think some people got burned maybe years ago. And, therapists, it's not because their heart wasn't in the right place. They didn't know what they didn't know.
Yeah.
And there were certain things that were being asked of people that weren't necessarily like the best treatment methods, or we were inadvertently exposing people to trauma that weren't prepared to manage it. And so I do think that has helped too, where when you get the clinicians that work well with first responders and our reputations are out there, it's like, hey, if you want help, here's somebody I trust.
Yeah.
And this is somebody who specializes in what we do. It helps kind of bring those barriers down. So I think a lot of it is like, it's required in Missouri, of course. So, they don't have a choice, but it's like, you can either embrace this and make the most of it. And you can recognize that, you have plenty of examples of people who have not handled things well. And so the hope is that people don't come when they're flatlining and we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
That we get in there early and say, I have some concerns about XYZ. And I think that some additional help would be helpful. And they get to decide. I mean, we can't mandate them to, come to future counseling. But I have been impressed and amazed at the number of people that have said, like, give me your card. I might call you someday. And because we know how first responders are, I'm like, how about you give me your number and I'll check in with you in a week. And then when I do, oftentimes they're saying, you know what, I will come back. And, and because I want to strike while that iron's hot. So
I think all it takes is just like for a few officers, because I know it did with our agency. Just a few officers that like, hey, this actually helps.
Exactly.
And they're like, all right, if they go, I think I can go. And it kind of like take like a snowball effect to it.
Exactly. Especially like when you think about, if somebody looks up to you or they think of you as this tough guy or tough gal, and like, oh, like she got help there, or I didn't know Captain, was in counseling. And so normalizing getting help and talking about it as openly as you're comfortable doing. I mean, that's why I'm always open. Like, yep, I have a therapist and I always will. And I don't want people to think that I'm not capable of treating them because I'm working on me. It's quite the opposite. I'm going to be better at my job if I work on myself and keep myself accountable. And so we're trying to liken it to, you do all kinds of training to maintain your skills as a first responder. Like, this is maintaining your brain. And that at the end of the day is going to be what's there once this career is gone, either by choice, by force, retirement, whatever. What are you doing, to care for yourself when that remains?
So I want you to put your therapist hat on. It's
I don't ever take it off.
I'm about to say it's probably always on. And like, I know that one of the biggest problems in first responders is like fatigue and depression and suicidal stuff. I guess, what can someone do just to kind of start off like getting better? Like, other than just seeing a therapist, what are the steps to like, because a lot of people, they're going to see this, and probably a lot of people aren't seeing therapy or a therapist. But I guess, what steps can they take just to start getting better? Not just like, hey, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do, this is how you get better, but like just the steps to get better. Because I know a ton of people that go through that are just afraid to say anything.
Sure. And I think we've also normalized some of those things so much. Like, first responders don't sleep. It's normal to be tired. And I hear that all the time at the peer support trainings where we ask people, like, what's the average amount of sleep? And people are in there saying 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and they think that that's normal. And so I think some of it is, gathering accurate information and using reputable sources to do that. So using like medical-based websites and finding out, like the VA actually has quite a bit on sleep. And so like researching, like, what is the average amount of sleep I should be getting at my age? What are some sleep hygiene things that I can do? Because the way that sleep gets disrupted is often because of like a precipitating factor, like shift work, new baby at home, injury, whatever the case may be. But a perpetuating factor is something that maintains it. So maybe bad sleep hygiene, spending too much time on the phone, not using, noise blocking things, etc. So kind of figuring out, what are you doing that might be exacerbating the problem, and learning those healthy habits to start trying. So, putting your phone down 30 to 60 minutes before bed, not grabbing it, first thing in the morning and throwing yourself into the day, which is really hard for all of us. Looking at room temperature, looking at what you do that hour before bed. Is it something that, brings relaxation or not? There's just little tips that can kind of help you get back on the right track. And, being able to recognize that if you've been doing it on your own for a long time and it's not working, then it might be time to reach out for some help. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I have so much stuff, I don't know where to begin, or I'm too far gone, like, that is not true. There is always hope and help, but you have to have that first step of saying, the way I've been doing it isn't working and I don't like how I feel. And so I don't want to do it like this anymore. So knowledge is power, but also the recognition of, like, let's put pride aside and prioritize getting better. Because sleep is really the thing where the bottom falls out for me when I don't get sleep. Like, that is what I absolutely need. That's when trauma symptoms worsen. That's when irritability worsens, all of that, right?
Well, my sleep got 10 times better after I figured out getting help. And then when I left, and it's just like. And you feel so much better when you get rest. And so when people aren't, they have to recognize that it's going to impact everything. And people think they do a lot better on sleep deprivation than they really do. I thought so too. I was like, I need 4 hours, I'm good. No way.
Like, there's so much that happens internally. So helping people understand that, like, sometimes one minor shift, like getting better sleep, might help so many other facets. And so not underestimating the Maslow's hierarchy of needs: nutrition, sleep, exercise, hydration. If those things are a basket case, everything else will fall apart. And so sometimes that's the first things I'm talking to people about in session is, let's get some of these basics down. because if those basic needs aren't met, how do we think we're going to level it up and do the next thing?
So now we're fast forwarding a little bit to like present day, and like, so this is how I met you through WCPR,
Yes.
right? And that's like one of my favorite things. Like, I know it sounds crazy. Like, that's like, those retreats are so much.
They're
like,
awesome.
They're awesome. And they like fill my cup up.
Absolutely.
And like mentally and just physically, like I love going to those things. I love helping people out. So for you guys that don't know, it's WCPR's West Coast Post Trauma Retreat. It's a program for first responders that, you know, it's like a week-long therapy session pretty much.
Yeah, it's intense.
Intense therapy, but it tries to help first responders, you know, get better, that are facing those issues in life. And you come to the retreat and we get you better. So if you're a first responder, look into it. But
August is the next one here.
yes, we're still looking for people.
Yes.
So how did you get involved into it?
Through, Angie Jones with KBI, and then, our mutual friend Rebecca.
Yeah.
Just kind of started talking with them around the time that I thought that I was going to potentially depart from the FBI, and they were looking for more clinical support. And so my first retreat, I was scheduled.
I was at your first retreat.
You were, because I was scheduled to be in a different role in a couple days
they were
beforehand.
Like,
we had a shift in that, and so Rebecca called and said, "Hey, are you ready to take this on?" And I said, "I think you guys are more worried about it than I am, because truly, I had to roll with the punches for so long at the FBI. Like, I have no problem stepping in, and like you, I mean, it fills my cup. It reminds me why I do what I do, and as tiring as it is amazing, and the change that we see is, I mean, it's honestly beyond words. And so I'm with you that it's one of my favorite times of each year. Ever since I started, I've been to every retreat, so I think I've been to 4, and I as long as they keep inviting me back, I'm planning on coming.
The same way, like as long as they keep telling me I can come back, I will be there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So, like, I guess, how's life been now? Like, how do you manage the work-life balance now that now you can kind of see, what you're doing wrong, if you're not mentally there, you're stressed out. Like, now you're in the therapist role. Like, is it getting better for you to maintain that like work-life balance?
Well, since I know some of my friends are going to be watching, I feel like I have to be honest about this. So what happened for me, unfortunately, is that I perpetuated the chaos I came from a little bit. And so I am getting there, but I'm still overextended and doing too much. But the good and bad thing is it is in my control. And so I'm just trying to focus and get things situated in a way that makes more sense. It's hard when you create something, it doesn't immediately change, even when you're like, okay, this is too much. It's like, well, I run the business now, so it's mine to figure out. So I'm working on delegating and hiring different roles. And so it just takes a little bit of time to catch up. So we are getting there, but I will say that is one cautionary thing that I will share with people is sometimes you think it's the job or the agency, but maybe you're that common denominator that's kind of making things harder than they have to be. And that's exactly what I did, where I was like, well, I always work late hours or early mornings. And so this isn't such a big deal to add this. And I know we both know Rob Hole. One of the things he said a few years ago at a training that stuck with me was, when you say yes to something, you have to say no to something else. And that stuck with me, where I said, you know what, I will say yes to something, but I have to say what needs to be removed for me to make this work. And I don't always get it right, but I'm getting better. And I thankfully have friends that hold me accountable that will say, is this really a good idea? Yeah. My husband's great about it too, to say like, I think this is too much, or I think you need to reconsider that. And so we are getting there, and I'm definitely in a better place. But as you mentioned, like, it's a journey, and many years of buildup takes many years to recover, but every day and every year gets better. Yeah. And so I'm hopeful that in a year or more that I'll be in a completely different place and have much more balance than I do now. So I've kind of created this animal, but we're getting there.
But I will say it is tough owning any kind of business.
It is.
Someone put it to me, and this stuck with me too. It's like having your own business is like having a child that never grows up. It's like you're always worried about it.
Yeah.
You're always caring for it. You're always thinking about it.
That
and
is
it's
so
like,
true.
Yeah, it just never grows up. It's like,
Yeah.
I was like, that's exactly how it is.
You wake up in the middle of the night and you're like,
shit,
yeah, I got to
forgot
do this.
Yeah. Or I forgot to do that. Or I need to order this. Or I need to. Yeah. And just like, my wife's always just like, you really need to do that right now? I'm like, you're right. I don't need to
my
do
brain
that.
thinks I do, but I don't.
Yeah.
I love it.
So what's next for you? Anything? Just focus on the business, or are you trying to open up another spot in Kansas? Or
no, I mean, well, actually, I will say I think that is a next step, is a second location. I'm just trying to figure out where it makes sense. Right now in Eastern Jackson County, we aren't as saturated with clinicians, so I want to be mindful of filling gaps where they may. So I don't know if I'll consider Kansas or if I'll even consider more like Independence, Kansas City, but we are outgrowing. I mean, we just moved into a new space in November, and we're already at a place where we could expand. And so, I think that is kind of what's next. And, Rebecca and I are partnering to provide support for first responder clinicians. And so I don't know if we knew this when she came on, but we are hosting a retreat in November in Costa Rica for clinicians who work with first responders.
She told me about that. And it's like, how do I get in that? Because I want to go to Costa Rica.
Right? Well, we might have a spot. We'll see. But that's kind of my vision, is eventually I want to do some clinical work, but I'd like to do other retreats and trainings and other things that are a little different than the one-to-one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's more where my passion is like in this burnout realm, because I do presentations and speaking engagements and different things on burnout. And I use a lot of my lived experience, but also a lot of the research on things to do to move past it. So that's where I see things going, as more of a like trainer and consultant type role. But for now, it's just trying to get settled. And because I feel like every time something gets settled, we make another change. We hire somebody, or someone increases hours, or we have another contract come. It's a great problem to have, but it's also overwhelming sometimes.
Very overwhelming. I experienced that. It's like nothing's stagnant. Like when you think things are like, oh, things are chill, things are going good, and it's like, boom, like, oh shit, I got to do this now.
Yeah. Well, and if it were stagnant, I'd be freaking out, because I would. So it's this weird phenomenon where like I want to be constantly busy, because if I'm not, the fear of like not being able to make it work. But sometimes it would be nice to think like everything is handled and it doesn't have to be by me. So I think looking to add, more layers of supervision, so I'm not having to manage like as the owner and the business manager and the clinical director and all of that. So
someone told me, don't be an employee of your business.
That is what we are doing.
It's so hard.
It is. So I'm
like,
working on that, and then just delegating too, and hiring the right people in virtual roles and assistant roles. So, same time next year, things will probably look different, but I'm excited to expand and keep meeting the need, especially now that first responders are shifting that narrative. It's been really great to be a part of that too.
Yeah. No, you guys are killing it. I love seeing it. I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad for you. So how can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, just Rachel Murdock, or my business page is Beyond the Storm Behavioral Health. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, or www.beyondthestormkc.com. And, if you're interested, if you're a clinician and you're taking a look at this, you can also get in touch with Mike, who knows how to reach me, or send an email to rachel@beyondthestormkc.com, and we can send you more information about the retreat in Costa Rica.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. This has been an awesome time.
You learned a lot about me, apparently.
I sure did. I didn't know all the other stuff that you travel and everything. That was, I guess, cool-ish.
It was. It was, honestly, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
There's definitely, that much travel is not met without some issues, but I think it's one of those things, a lot of people probably don't know those things about me, because it was just part of what I did for work, and then it was just a normal day for us. So,
Well, now I'm glad you're out, and I'm glad you're doing this.
Too.
Glad you're helping.
Thank
But
you.
thank you for coming on, and I will see you in August.
Yes, can't wait.
Yes. And thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys follow, and if you need any help, reach out to Rachel, or reach out to somebody that you might need or you might know, just to get some help. And thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week.